right? So before we work on any tool, so it's essentially installation is very important factor, because unless we install the tool, we don't know how it is actually working. It's like, once we have a control on the installation, when we know the process of how do we install, it's kind of, we have more knowledge on the tool and much comfortability on how we use that tool. So the idea is, uh, get hands on how do we install the OBIEE, so that we are aware of the process, and we can install it on your systems. And tomorrow, if something goes wrong, we can, we don't really need to rely or depend on somebody to install the software for us or something. So it's not necessarily that you have to install it on your system, but again, yes, you can go through the process. But I prefer if you can do it on your system. And in case if you are not able to do it, or for some reason you cannot do it on your system, and I do provide a virtual machine. Virtual machine is a pre-built software where you already have the OBIEE installed in an instance, where you can download and you can run it within your system. So you have both the options, and you can go ahead and use it and according to your requirement. Right. So let's see the prerequisites first. Before we actually start doing the installation, we would like to understand what do we need to install the OBIEE. So what are the different softwares that we need, and what is the configuration that is required for the installation, and all the stuff. So all right, so let's look at the system level. So what is the computer, or what is the system that you need? I mean, what kind of configuration that is required, right? So you have to have a minimum of 4 GB RAM. You have to have a system with 4 GB RAM. That is prerequisite. Without 4 GB, you will not be able to install. Suppose in case if you would like to use a virtual machine, so you have to have the 8 GB for. If you have to run the pre-built virtual machine, which I provide, in that case, you don't need to install anything, but you have to have 8 GB RAM on your system, so that you can run the virtual machine. Or I mean, 6 GB is also fine, but again, preferably 8 GB. Okay, so that is the minimum requirement in terms of the RAM, and disk space is fine. Like if you have like 20 GB disk space, that is more than enough. Okay, and your operating system could be Windows 7. Windows 8 doesn't support in most of the cases. Like if you have Windows 8, you cannot directly install it. You can try it. It's not that you cannot install, but sometimes it may fail, because Windows 8 is not the certified version. So since OBIEE 11G is released even before the Windows 8 has come to the market, and they have not provided the certification for that version. But I mean, you can do it, but preferably if there is any way that you can get Windows 7 on your system or something, then you can do it. And in case if Windows 8 you're not able to install or something, you can go for the virtual machine. So that's one option. And XP it supports, and 2008, yeah, Windows 2008 or 2012. The server versions are perfectly fine. So you can use any of the Windows, or I mean, if you want to install it on a Linux, you can go for it. It perfectly supports Linux as well. But for practice, and I prefer you go for the Windows, because it's very easy for you to understand and install it on your own. So rather than going for the Linux, but end of the day, like whether you use the Linux or Windows, it's the same software, right? So no, the way it works is the same. So probably you are running the binaries on Windows or Linux. So the functionality is the same. So rather than struggling with Linux, which you are not comfortable with, so you go ahead and install it on Windows so that it's easy for you to get started. Probably once you are comfortable and you can take a VM copy, or you can install in Linux, and you can try something. But again, on the installation and all, it's kind of administrative activity which you actually don't do in real time. You are only a user in some way, like, and you are only a developer where you use the installed copy to develop the repositories, reports, and all the stuff. So, but again, having a familiarity is definitely helps, right? So this is the basic and the fundamental requirements of your system. So when you want to install the OBIEE, so what do you actually need in your system? So you have to have a minimum of 4 GB RAM, and if you are actually planning for a virtual machine, and it has to be an 8 GB RAM, and the disk space should be somewhere 20 GB, 20 gig, and OS has to be Windows 7 or XP or 2008 preferably. And if you have Windows 8, that is fine, but again, that is a last option. Right, this is your system requirement, and let's look at what kind of software you need. I mean, I've put my Windows as a part of system because it's a basic OS, right? And apart from the OS, operating system, so what is the other softwares that you need to install? So do you need to install any other prerequisites or any other softwares? Yes, so you have to have Java JDK 1.6.0 plus, right? So this is the Java version that is required. So why do you need a Java? Because the OBIEE is built and developed in Java entirely. I mean, of course, you don't need to know Java. So it's not that, no, because it's built in Java, you have to know Java, no, nothing. But again, since the software is built in Java, it has to has an environment that can run Java. So it's kind of, suppose say if you build something on Android and you have to have the phone with Android support, right? The same way here, OBIEE 11G is built on Java, so it has to has a Java software that is running on your system, so that uh, it can use your Java to run. And so the OBIEE will use the Java and execute. So internally, that is a prerequisite to install your OBIEE 11G. Right. So another thing that you need is Oracle database 11G. Right. So you can download the database 11G. 12C also fine. It doesn't matter. But I can preferably use 11G because 12C it's too new, and even you can go for the XE as well. So it's not like XE also. So XE is an Express edition. It's a free version and a lightweight version. So you can go for the XE as well if you want. And if you think like you don't have much system resources, and yes, I mean you can go and install XE, but otherwise go for 11G. That's a reasonable version. And the Java version and the database, I provide you the software, and so you don't download from the Oracle website or somewhere, because see the reason is incompatibility. Suppose if you download the Java latest version, so the latest version of the Java maybe too high version for the Oracle SOA 11G, because there is a compatible matrix where if 11G is built using Java JDK 1.6.0 or later, kind of yes, I mean it will support thing. But suppose if you go to the latest versions and install Java 8, then yeah, I mean it is good because it's the latest version, but at the same time there may be certain additional features or certain security features that may be added in Java which is not compatible with OBIEE 11G that is built on 1.6. Then it will create weird issues, weird errors. I mean, even it's very difficult for us to troubleshoot. So the idea is, follow the compatible matrix so that the installation is smooth. So, So I'll be sharing you the software on a Google Drive where I have all the software loaded there. I mean, uploaded there, and I'll be sending you the links with the download location of the Java and the database and all those stuff. So it makes your work easy, right? So these are the two prerequisites, and apart from that, obviously you have to download the OBIEE 11G, right? So this is Oracle Business Intelligence 11G software. So if you download this one, and you'll download four files, so it's kind of a combination of four files. The 11G is a combination of four files, and you have one more thing that you need to download, which is repository creation utility, which we also call it as an RCU. Right. So this is the required software in terms of what you need for the installation. So now let's try to understand the procedure. So how do we actually start the installation? What are the different steps that we follow, and where do we start, and other stuff. So before we get started, and I would like to see if anybody has any issues or anything that you want to know in terms of your system and other requirement. If you have any queries, we can discuss. Otherwise, we'll get started. That'll be good.
Hey Dinesh, quick question. Actually, OBIEE also will you be providing the links for that to download?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay. I see you and all the things which we mentioned. Right. Thanks.
Okay, just give me a minute. I would see if somebody is trying to join. Just give me a minute. Right. So this is the prerequisites for your installation. If you have all these things, then you can ready to get started. So now let's understand the process. What we exactly do now? Where do we get started, and the process that we follow? Okay. Anyway, so the first step that we do is the entire installation. The first step that we do is install database. So the first thing that we have to install the database. So it's 11G in our case. Right, so install our database. Okay, so I mean, it's preferably you use 11G, or you can also go for X. It's your choice, and that's the first thing. Second thing is once the database is installed, no, sorry, I mean you have to install the Java first, then you go for the database. Install Java. Before, I mean, it doesn't matter even if you install the database first and the Java next, that is okay. But yeah, so just it's preferably you install the Java because it's the first step, right? So, even if you install the database first, that doesn't harm you. because they are not actually related in a way, because database has its own JDK inside it, so it doesn't really use the JDK that is on the system. So you install the JDK, and once the Java installation is done, you install the database. Then you start with the RCU. You start with the RCU. RCU is nothing but, it's kind of a set of schemas, or set of tables that we create in the database. So OBIEE 11G is a fusion software. I mean, Oracle Fusion middleware software. It's a group of Fusion products. It's one of the Fusion product. So all the Fusion products, whichever the Fusion product, whether you install the OBIEE or SOA or Web Center or Identity Manager, Oracle Data Integrator, all these softwares, right? So they require some database to run. So when I'm running OBIEE, so backend there should be a database supporting the OBIEE. So that's the reason, we need a set of tables that is required by OBIEE in a database. So that's the reason we go for the RCU first, so that we have the required tables for OBIEE 11G is available. Then we'll install the OBIEE 11G. So this is the four-step process. Simple, straightforward. I mean, there's not it's not complex, and there is no complex process that we need to follow. So all we have to do is simply follow these four steps, one after the other, but just make sure that we follow the particular downloads and particular version, so that the compatibility will work. Suppose say you follow all the process, but you simply ignore that the Java version, and so you go to the Java website and download the latest Java, which is Java 8 or something, and you started installation. Right, so you followed the same process, but your installation may fail because Java 8 is not a compatible version for OBIEE to install or OBIEE to execute the installation. So there are simple things that we may miss, and that, so I mean, when we are installing, just make sure that you follow the instructions and you follow the steps and prerequisites. That way, we don't need to come back and reinstall a number of times. So perfect. So let's get started, and we'll see where do we install and how do we install. So um, we are not going to see the Java and database part as now at this point of time, because database itself will take around 30 to 45 minutes, because Oracle database installation is a time-taking process. Having said that, I believe kind of we have at least installed the database some other point of time in our requirements. So I presume we know how to install the database in the Java. Java is kind of a simple and straightforward. Next. So, but one thing that you need to remember is do not install Java in program files. We shouldn't install the Java in program files. When I say program files, when you double click on the Java, right, usually when you double click on the installation, like when you're installing, when you say double click Java, what happens is by the default location that it gives is the C program files kind of location. So within the program files, there is a space, right? So because of that space, when it is actually being a part of batch files, and when you're executing those batch files, they ignore the space. So most of the times whenever you're running the Java commands which is a part of this location, they fail to execute. So never ever install the Java in a program files location. So when you double click on the Java exe installation setup file, so in the first screen it will give you the location of the Java C program files and all, just ignore the program files part and make sure that you install it on C Java location. That's the easiest bet. You install in a C Java location. That's the easy place to install. So, and the safe place. So just give it as a C Java. Suppose if you look at my system installation, if you see here, I should be in a C Java location. The C, and if you see Java, right? So I have my um, Java installed. So C Java, there is a JDK and a JRE. So you see there is a 1.6.0 version. So release 45. So that's what I said. I'll be sharing you the JDK software and Java software to you for the download, so that it is easy for you to just install it. Just double click on it. All you have to do is have some patience and don't say next, be in a hurry. So sometimes what happens is like Java and all, it's known softwares, and we keep clicking next. So, but again, just make sure that before you keep clicking next, you read there like what it is saying, and when it asks for you the location, and change the location to C Java, then going for the C program files. Okay, so that's one thing that you need to make sure. Otherwise, what happens is we do whatever, like you install the total OBIEE, at the end it will fail because it's not able to find the Java, because Java is in program files, and one of the steps will fail in the process, and the total process will kind of fail. That's the reason use installation of the Java here. And the next database installation is pretty straightforward. I'll be sharing the database software, and you say kind of double click on setup and next. That's it. There's nothing really very specific about database. I mean, if in case you are stuck in database installation, you can go to the Google and you go to the YouTube and search for the Oracle database installation, and you can do it easily. But in case if you are stuck and if you need any assistance from me, please do let me know. I'll help you out. That's not a problem. And actually, before we go for this process, there is a general prerequisites that I just want to make sure we follow that. One is disable or uninstall antivirus. So if you have antivirus on your system, so I prefer you uninstall it. So I mean, you can disable it, but antivirus are they are a little weird. I mean, even if you disable it, they won't get disabled. I don't know, even if they get disabled for some time, and they they start again when you restart the system, or after kind of 1 or 2 hours. So you can only pause, I believe. So just to make sure you have no antivirus, I don't know if no process is stopping your installation, or no process is stopping your active process. So you have to either disable or uninstall, preferably uninstall. Uh, Disable firewall. If you have a firewall on your system, obviously Windows will have a firewall. So you just go and disable the firewall. So how do you disable the firewall? You can go here, control panel. Within the control panel, you have Windows firewall, right? And turn Windows firewall on and off. So you have the settings, and if you go to the settings, then you can unselect. You can choose as a no for both these options. And I'm not able to see it because I think I stopped my Windows process service. So you disable it, or you can go to the services, which is your services.ms Windows services, and you go in here and you see the Windows firewall. So there's a Windows firewall, and I stopped it, and I made the process as a manual. So this is something that you do. So if I make it manual, so it won't start automatically along with your Windows startup. So that's also one more step that you can do, because otherwise the problem with the Windows firewall is I mean like any firewall, every request that you execute, it goes through the firewall, and the firewall will keep asking you, like, do you want to start, do you want to allow this process, or do you want to allow this process? So sometimes the firewall will block your process execution, or block your OBIEE process to get executed. So it's preferably you have to disable the firewall. So these are the minimum two things, and if just to make sure, if you have these two things disabled, so the installation will be kind of a smooth. So because I've seen the situations where people have started installations, and um, they realize that they are failing at some point of time, because either the installation is very slow, or and even if it is speed, and at some point of time it is failing, because the antivirus is something, so the nature of the antivirus is, if it sees kind of a greater activity, or some process is actively running in your system or doing something, so it will find it as a threat, and it will try to do something. I don't know, either it stops that process, or blocks that process, or deletes that process, or whatever. So then you are in a different situation. So your OBI process is killed, so your installation will fail. So that's the reason, to be on safe side, you have to uninstall your antivirus. That's a mandatory. Okay, so these are the prerequisites, and RCU, then you install the RCU, then you install the OBA. So we'll start from the RCU part, and the Java and all. You go ahead and install it by next. But I provide the software for the Java and the database, and you install. We'll start the installation from RCU and the 11G. So before we actually go for the installation, we need to know, like, where do we download the software from, and how do we download the software, and what kind of software, how many files that we need to download, what is the size, and all we'll see, so that you can follow the instructions. See, when you're installing, make sure that you follow the video, and even if you are clear about the steps, and even if you think it's simple, but I suggest you go through the video once. I mean, you can move forward, or you can do a fast forward whenever you want, if you think, like, you already know some part of it. The reason is, when you're installing, you sometimes, you take it for granted, and you know that, you keep clicking next, and you keep doing the things. So, and you'll realize at some point of time, you missed one step, so which may be a problem at later point of time. So let's go and download. So let's go and download the OBIEE 11G, and so Oracle BI. So as you know, like, an OBIEE is nothing but Oracle Business Intelligence Enterprise Edition. Oracle Business Intelligence Enterprise Edition. OBIEE, just short form of Oracle Business Intelligence Enterprise Edition. Okay, so you simply go to the Google and search for Oracle BI. Download. Right, so Oracle Business Intelligence 11G download. Just click on this one. So this is your software location where you can download your OBIEE. If you see here, you have to accept the license agreement, and this is 11.1.1.6.0. This is one version, and this is your Oracle Business Intelligence. And if you look at here, this is Oracle Business Intelligence Developer Client Installer, Client Tool Installer. It's kind of client tool. This is again 6.0 version. So this is one set of version, which is 11.1.6.0. This is the 11.1.1.7.0, which is the latest version. Okay, and again, it also has its own client tools, but again, here the client tools, you have it for 64-bit and 32-bit. And again, yes, one more important thing that I would like to mention it here, the processor type. So 32-bit or 64-bit. This is very important thing before we get started. So you need to understand if your system is having a 32-bit processor or 64-bit processor. So accordingly, you have to download the software. Right? So I believe nowadays all the systems are 64-bit mostly, unless you have a very old system that you are working on. But again, how do I know whether my OS operating system is a 32-bit or 64-bit? So you can go to your start menu and you can go to your computer and say properties. I mean, this is a Windows 7 one. So if you look at here, and the system type is 64-bit operating system. It's a 64-bit operating system. So if you have a 64-bit operating system, you download the software for 64-bit. Everything is nowadays like, even if you download the Java or you download the database, you download OBIEE, every software is available in two versions, 32-bit and 64-bit. So essentially, when you want to install your software in a 32-bit operating system, you have to use the 32-bit one. 64, you have to use the 64-bit one. Yeah, I mean, it's basically your OS also depends on the your processor type. It's a 32-bit or 64-bit. Okay, so I assume all this installation is done. The software that is provided for Java and database is 64-bit one. In case if you are using 32-bit, do let me know. I'll share the relevant software to you. But otherwise, the assumption is we are using 64-bit. Okay, so here when you are downloading the software, also you have to be very careful whether you're downloading the 32-bit or 64-bit. So again, so now we'll go for the 7 version 11.1.7.0, which is the latest, obviously. Okay, so now this is the server software where you actually install. This is the client. So client tools are basically, it's like, to access the server, or to develop it's kind of designer kind of tools where you use this one. So, but you don't need to download this part, because when you install the server, you'll automatically have this one. So ideally, in what situations you download this is, so you go to your office environment, for an example. So tomorrow you join a company, right? So do you install the software on your system, OBIEE? No. Obviously, in an office, it's not expected that you install it in your laptop, because there are servers in the office, and in the enterprise they have the servers where the OBIEE is installed on one of the server, and you access that server and do all the stuff. But again, the client tools is basically you install something on your laptop where the basic development, so repository creation, this and that, the basic development part is done on our laptops, because it's designing where you design the repository, you design the required reports and all those things, right? So you have the browser client or you have the Windows client, so there's a different clients available. So in those situations, you simply download the client, you don't download anything else. So, but again, in our case, like we are planning to install the OBIEE, right? So you have to download this one. We are not downloading the client tool at this point of time, because the actual server installation will also have the client get installed automatically. So if you are installing on your system the total OBIEE, you don't need to download this part. It is automatically get installed as part of this only. But in case you don't want to install the total OBIEE, you want to install only client tools, and you are accessing the OBIEE which is there on your enterprise environment, then you can only go for the client tool, which is a basic designer where you develop your repository kind of stuff. So my focus is downloading the Oracle Business Intelligence. So I click on all supported platforms. So it is just accept the license, and if you look at here, it's 11.1.7.0 version, and you have the OBIEE's download available for multiple operating system versions and multiple types. See, it is for Microsoft Windows 32-bit and Microsoft Windows 64-bit. That's what I was saying. When you are not sure, like if your Windows is 64 and you download the 32-bit version, Now, when you try to install, it will fail because it's very important you look at it first because it's not a simple and small file. So together it's around 8 gig download which you're doing. So it's waste of time where you download total 8 gig files and you're ready to install it, and then you realize that it's incompatible software because your operating system is of 64-bit and you're installing a 32-bit one. So rather, you look at it first, what is your OS and is it 32-bit or 64-bit? Accordingly, download. If your operating system is a 64-bit and you download the 64-bit part out. So later, suppose you join the job and somebody asks you to install the OBIEE on a Linux environment, and you download these Linux bit which is 32-bit, or if it is a 60 Linux also you have 32-bit and 64-bit. It's not technically it's not operating system dependent. It's the processor type, and the software is built for the processor. So again, that's a different story which we need to deal with the um, kind of hardware. But your operating system, you install the operating system based on what processor you are using. If my processor is 32-bit, I install the operating system of 32-bit. If my processor is 64-bit, I install the operating system of 64-bit, because 32-bit is kind of 64-bit is double, right? So 64-bit is having a capacity to process kind of 64 bits of data so it will process double the data. The processor is capable of processing double the data. So and okay, so let's not get into that, but so make sure that you look at it whether your processor is 32-bit and 64-bit, and accordingly download the software. So it has support for Linux and it has support for Sun Solaris, uh, AX and HPUX and all this different version. So now we have finalized like what we need to download. So these are the 4 files that we need to download. So disk 1 of 2, 2 of 2, disk 2, within the disk 2 you have 1 of 2 and the 2 of 2. So together you have like 1, 2, 3, 4 files. Okay, within the disk 1 you have the 2 files, within the disk 2 you have the 2 files. So 4 files together comes around 6 gig or 7 gig. Right, so if you have a slow download, probably it will take some time, but I think in US it should be fine. Probably you can download within less than 15 minutes or 30 minutes, right? So these are the 4 files that you have download. Anyway, I'll send you the links for these files in the email that I'll be sharing you for the software. But in case, you can also go to the website and for the Oracle website, and you can download it from here. You can automatically reach out to these links, but I'll also send it to you. So that is the OBIEE 11G part, and if you scroll down a bit and you see something called repository creation utility, which is called an RCU. So what is this RCU? So basically RCU is a small utility where it will enable or it will allow you to create the tables that is required for the OBIEE. So you remember, like in good old days, or in the previous versions of the any of the softwares that we do, we used to get a script, which is a database script, where we'll get some scripts where you execute the script and it will create the database tables. Then we start doing our installation of the actual software. So what is that you do in that step? So the prerequisites for the software is you have to have some database with some tables. It's the basic assumption. So what do we do before we install in the software? We install the database and we run the scripts on the database and create these tables. So the tables are available. Then when you are installing the actual software, you use these tables which you already installed. So the same same process that we follow here. So OBIEE requires some set of tables beforehand, right? So that is the reason we install this RCU process, where we install the tables using the RCU process, and the same tables that we install using the RCU process we use at the point of installation of the OBIEE. So it's just again, this RCU is also, you have 64-bit as well as the 32-bit, and you download the RCU according to your requirement. So just coming back to our basic requirements. So this is what we have. So we have Java, database, archive, OBIEE11, just simple. Okay, so let's go back and let's get started. And if you see the software, right? So I believe I would like to show you the software. This is OBIEE, right? This is the Java software that you download, and this is the Windows. Sorry, this is the Java JDK 1.6.0 Windows 64. I'll share you the link at a later point after the class. And this is the Java. Sorry, this is the Oracle Win64 11G R1. Okay, these are the two softwares. One is for the Java, one is for the database. And if you see here, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you look at each file is of somewhere around 1.4 gig, 1.7 gig, 1.8, 1.9. These are the four files like disk 1 of 2, 2 of 2. So those kind of naming convention is there, right? So those are the 4 files. This is the RCU file. Okay, you have 5 files that you're downloading. So 4 files from here, 4 files from here, and 1 file from here. And again, so the look and feel, the naming convention will be different when you download the files, because there are different places that you actually download the software, and there is a location called e-delivery. So Oracle has a location like e-delivery where you can go and download it from there as well. So I have downloaded from there. So the naming convention looks little cryptic, but if you download it from the website, it will have more meaningful naming convention, but doesn't matter like what name the files are. But, just assume that you have 4 files like 1 of 2, 2 of 2, and 1 of 2, 2 of 2. You have 4 files that will get downloaded. This is RCU is one individual file. So how do you identify like which is RCU? So RCU is of size 332, but otherwise if you download it, will have name like an RCU or something. So but it is of less size. So I have 5 files now. So how do I get started and how do I install first? So we'll start with RCU. As I told you, like before we actually go for the installation, we have to have the schemas or tables to be ready in the database for the OBIEE to use it at a later point of time. So if I look at here, if I double click on this, and there is a folder called RCU home inside the zip file. So I already extracted these files here. So if you see, right click and extract here. So before you actually do that, you download the WinRAR software. So WinRAR is kind of a prerequisite. I mean, if you have WinZip or some software on your system which you can extract the zip files or RAR files, then perfectly fine. Otherwise, you can go for the rarlab.com, or you can go to the Google and say download WinRAR. So you can simply download it. Right. So so if you right click and say extract here, then it will get extracted and it will create RC home. Okay. Right. So, and again, one more thing that you do is if you see these 4 files, right? What are these 4 files? These 4 files are the actual OBIEE files. So now what you need to do is if you see a little bit of the folder structure inside it, this is the first file, right? If I double click on this file, you see there is a folder called BI ship home. If you look at it here, there is a BI ship home after the extraction, and inside the BI ship home, if I go here, there is there is a disk 1. Okay, so now this one is having a folder BI ship home inside it, and inside that there is a folder called a disk 1. So if I double click on the second one, I have BI ship home, and inside it I'll have a disk 2. So which means under the BI ship home I have the disk 2. If I double click on this one, BI ship home, and this is the disk 3. This is the 4th file. If I double click, BI ship home, disk 4. So essentially what do I have now? I have BI ship home. So if I right click and if I say extract here, don't do extract to. I have to do an extract here because I'm extracting in the same folder which I have. I'm not moving it to a different folder. It is very important you do the extract here, because we have to have the folder structure after the extraction of all these 4 files. Our folder structure should look like this: disk 1, disk 2, disk 3, disk 4. So we have to have the folder structure this way, so that uh, when you're installing, right, the files are automatically identified. Suppose say now some files are available in disk 1, some files are available in disk 2, some files are available in disk 3. So if you have in this structure, and it won't ask you, it will automatically go to the basic assumption is that they are in this format. So the software will assume that disk 2 is in the same location, it will go to the disk 2 and will pick up. Suppose if you extract in individual folders, then for every time it requires a disk to write, it will prompt you say select the location for disk 2. Then you have to struggle a bit while doing the installation. So preferable way is make sure that you install all these kind of 4 files into the same folder, BIShip home. So all you have to do is simply right click, extract here, and again say go to the second file, right click, extract here, third file, go right click, extract here, fourth file, right click, extract here. Simple, right? So at the end, you have something similar to it, RC home, which is an extract of the first file, which is for repository creation utility, and there's one more which is for the BIShip home. 2 things that you will have. So I have already done that for us, because I don't really want to spend too much time in extracting and downloading all those things. So I'm going to do the installation on a Windows XP machine. I already have the software downloaded. I already have the database installed and the Java installed on this system. All we are going to do is we are going to install the OBIEE now. That's it. So database and the Java is already installed here. So just we are installing the OBIEE. So within the OBIEE we are installing the, as I said, the RCU first, because it's a prerequisite. Once we install RCU, then we'll go for the OBIEE. So if I look at the software, and this is my RCU home, this is my BIShip home. So I don't have any zip files here because I have deleted those files after the download, because I would like to save some space. So this is the actual folder structure that we need after the extraction of RCU. I have my RCU home folder and with other files inside it, and I have my BIShip home, and inside my BIShip home I have the 4 disk 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, like this. So this is what we wanted, right? So now before we actually install, we would like to make sure our database is running. So when our database is running and we are able to log into the database, that is very important. So I go to my database and I try to log into my database. So this is my SQL Plus, and I want to see if my service is running, or I can log in if it is logging in. I log in with my system user, and the password is welcome one. I mean, on my system, the password is welcome one. So I'm able to log in, which means my database is running. Otherwise, that is also one of the prerequisites that you need to check if your database is running or not. Otherwise, what happens? You're trying to install the RCU by connecting to the database, but your database itself is not running. So that is something weird. So you need to make sure that you have your database installed. So and started. So I have my Oracle 11G listener is started at the same time, and my Oracle service ORCL, which is my database service, which is running. So both are in automatic mode. So which means when I start my system, my database will get automatically started. So there is a little bit tuning that we can do as part of this, where we can stop the unnecessary services like VSS Writer, Job Scheduler, and all those things. But for now, we don't really care. Okay, so we assume that database is installed and database is running. So before we actually go and start installing, we'll try to log in once and make sure that the database is running, and at the same time you are able to log in. See, the reason I'm doing all these things step by step and doing everything is it's very important for us to identify at every step we are on track. And so see, imagine like you are trying to install the RCU, but your database itself is not running. So it makes no sense, right? And if you do that way, you always fail to install the RCU, and uh, within the RCU process, and you are seeing errors or issues. So rather than blindly doing the things, and it's always kind of identify the prerequisites and make sure that that prerequisites are good, then go ahead, right? So my SQL is I'm able to connect to my database through SQL Plus, so I confirm the database is running. Now the first step that we do is we go inside the RCU, and inside that there is a bin. And again, one more important thing before you actually extract, you may have downloaded the software to any location. Suppose sometimes you download the software to the downloads location or this and that. So that doesn't matter wherever you download. Make sure that you move all the software to a folder called a software or some XYZ. But remember, there shouldn't be any space throughout. So wherever, like in suppose say you have downloaded the software, C software, OBIEE, this, that, you can give any location name, but there shouldn't be any space anywhere. If you have a space, and your RCU installation will fail because it's a batch file. If there is a space in the folder, it will not work. So there shouldn't be any space in a folder where you have the software downloaded. Okay, so that is one important thing that you need to remember, because often many people will come and say that I'm not able to install RCU. Then if I go and if I look at it, and they have kept the software in a folder where there is a space, like in a OBIEE space software, assuming I'm just giving an idea. If somebody creates a folder OBIEE space software, Windows will allow, because Windows, that's fine for Windows. It will create a folder with a space. But if you copy all these softwares to that folder and you're trying to install the RCU, it will fail because um, OBIEE software. So now it will, since there is a space, it will take only OBIEE out to OBIEE. It will ignore the space, and it will ignore the space, and after whatever that is there available after the space. So then you don't get the full folder name. You'll get the part of the folder name. Okay. Right, so when I go to RCU, and inside the RCU there is something called a bin. Okay, inside this there is a lot of files. Let's not worry about all these files. There is a file called an rcu.batch. This is, if you see that this is a batch file, the symbol, so it's a RCU. Right, so you right click on this file and say open. And in a Windows 7 you can say run as administrator. That is easy, right? Or you can go for a list and you can see it in somewhere here. This is an RCU. Okay, so when you open, it will automatically start a repository creation utility. Okay, and you can skip this page next time, which means when you install RCU next time, it won't show you this page, because it's a welcome page, right? So if you don't want to see it next time, you simply skip it. But again, obviously it doesn't matter at this point of time. Right, I say next. So RCU is, as I told you, like, it's a repository creation utility. It's a set of uh, scripts that will get executed on your database, and it will create a tables. So this RCU installation file will work as two different ways. One, you can create the tables. Like, it's kind of, when you install the software, you have two things, right? You can install it and you can uninstall it. So obviously, right? So create, if I select the create process, which means I'm going to create the tables. So if I select the drop process, I'm dropping the table. So why do I need to use a drop, and where do I need to use a drop? Suppose, say today I've installed my OBIEE, and for some reason I would like to uninstall my OBIEE. So when you want to uninstall the OBIEE, you have to drop the tables that you have already created, because you want to uninstall everything, right? So in those situations, you can run the same RCU, but this time you choose the drop, so you can drop the existing tables. So, but at this point of time, we assume that there is no tables available, so I choose the option create. So what is it I'm doing here? I'm creating the tables that is required for the OBIEE, and I say next. So now to create the tables in the database, fundamentally what do we need to do? We need to provide the database details. Unless we provide the database details, my script doesn't know where is the database and where it is running. So that's the reason what we do. We simply provide the details of the database where my Oracle database is running. So I provide the details. So host name is usually localhost or your computer name. In general, I mean, if when you're installing on your system, either you can go for the localhost or you can right click on your computer and can go for properties and see the name of the computer. There's a computer name. So user PC, you can go with this name, and whatever the full name of your computer, you can go for the full name of the computer. It's your choice. Port by default, the port is 1521 for Oracle databases. If you are going for XE, it's yeah, it's for that also it's 1521. So default port number of Oracle database is what? 1521. Okay, so remember, make sure that you don't have more than one database installation. Sometimes, um, you double click on the database and you install it, and you install the database like in 3-4 times because you have seen some issue. So there are few situations where student complains saying, "Oh, I've installed the database and my OBIEE installation is not working, or my system is very slow or something." But when I go and look at it, they have installed database like in 6-7 times. So they have 6-7 instances running on the system. So unless you have that kind of situation, and this is the basic configuration that will be there in every system. So it's kind of, if you have a plain simple one installation of OBIEE, this is generic configuration. The reason I'm saying is, if you're having two instances of the database, for the first instance it will take 1521. If you install the databases again on your system, so if there are two databases running, then it will automatically take 1521 for one, because 1521 is busy and occupied. When you are installing the next software, it will take 1522, something like that. But otherwise, in a standard installation, and the port is 1521. Okay, I'll tell you like in where do you actually get these details. If you install the database, right, within the database there is something called TNS names file. So if I go for app administrator product, this one DB, you have something called network admin. This is the location where you have your, so this is a video, right? So you can pause anywhere and you can go for the location if you want. But this is a standard location, or you can search for the tnsnames.ora, tnsnames.ora. If I say open this file and I select my file to open in a notepad. If you look at here, see the host name is user PC, where my database is running. Port is what? 1521, and my service is ORCL. So this is the same configuration that I provide. So localhost are kind of a computer name, and port is 1521, and my service name is what? ORCL. This is the default configuration. Okay. Now I need to install my database and I need to provide the user, right? Because if this script has to connect to the database and install on it, I need to have the dedicated access to the database. So I always have to use a user which is called sys. Remember, when you're installing the database, you remember the password of the sys and the system. When you're installing the database, you are asked to give a password. So when you're creating a database installation, initially you provide the password for the sys and system user. You need to remember that password, otherwise you'll not be able to connect later. Okay, so the user is always sys, or any user which is having a privilege of sysdba. Okay, because when you are creating the schemas, and so what you're essentially doing is, with the system user, you're going to create a new user and the tables inside that user. So when I have to create the users in the database, I have to have the DBA privileges, which is nothing but a sysdba. And I give my password, which is welcome one. In general, I provide for the installation and everywhere for the OBIEE password as a welcome one. So it's a standard password of the Oracle. So it's easy. So you don't need to really by heart, or you don't really need to remember the password. And you install something, you give some password with a complex name, and after a week, and you come back and you try to log in and you don't remember what password you have given. So let's not get into that, and you give the standard password welcome one everywhere, so that whenever it asks for the password, you can simply give that. So since it is your laptop and doesn't worry about any of the security things. Okay, and say next. At times, it may give you a little alert saying, the database is not compatible version and all, and so you can ignore this. Simply say ignore. So it is running a prerequisites, checking global prerequisites just to make sure that your database and everything is compatible and it is ready for the installation. If everything goes fine, and say okay. If you look at here, it is going to install your software with a prefix of dev, which means whatever that it installed, whatever the user that it creates, right? It creates something like a dev underscore, dev underscore, dev underscore. So, for example, it creates dev underscore BA platform, that is one of the user, and it creates dev underscore MDS, another user, another schema. So whatever that you create, and you can create with a prefix. So the advantage is like I can use one single database to create a number of schemas. Suppose say I can use one database where I may have the schema for dev and the schema for test and the schema for prod. Three schemas can be installed, and my three different environments may be pointing to the same database. Just giving you a heads up. So it will get installed with a prefix. By default, you can leave it as it is unless you want to change. And you see here, and there are different softwares that you can create schemas for. But what software that we are interested in? We are interested in our Oracle Business Intelligence. So let's not worry about rest of the things. So simply select the checkbox for Oracle Business Intelligence. Now, the moment I select the checkbox for Oracle Business Intelligence, and if you see Oracle Business Intelligence, it is selected, and the schema that it is going to create for dev underscore BI platform. If I go up, and there is something around metadata service also got automatically selected. What is the schema for this one? Dev underscore MD. So essentially, when you install the RCU, what exactly it will do? It will create two schemas. It will create two schemas. One is dev underscore BI platform. Other is dev underscore MDS inside the database. The reason I'm writing it down here is at a later point of time we need to provide these schema details, because once we install it, right? Once we install this one, when we are installing the database OBIEE will ask the details of these two schemas, so for it to use internally. So at that point of time within the OBIEE installation, it will prompt you saying, what is the kind of RCU details. Then I need to provide these two schema details. So that's the reason. Make a note it somewhere. Okay, so next. So it is doing the prerequisites, and see for these two schemas, it is asking me to provide the password. So I can provide the password separately for the individual users, or if you think like I don't really need to give a different password for these two. If I want to give the same password for both these schemas, both the users, then I can give the same password. So I give the password as welcome one, and my confirm password is also welcome one. So I'm just I'm setting the password. So it's not like I'm not accessing, I'm setting it. So password is welcome one. So after this installation, both the schemas will have the password welcome one, because it's kind of if you create a user, and you have to provide the password for the user, right? So these two schemas are created, or users are created, and for these you provide the software, sorry, you provide the password. So next. So when you are actually installing, it's going to create a table space, which is default table space and all the stuff. So temporary table space and kind of required things. Even if you think like if you would like to manage table spaces, so if you want to allocate more database size, suppose say this is a dev underscore BA platform. If you want to give the table space, the DBF file is this one. So the table space size 64. If you think like, and if you want to give more, then you can give more. So use big file table space. So it's depend. I mean, in general, we don't need to, because it's our installation is normal, right? But if you're going for production, if you think like you need to store more data, then you can also have the option of say next a table space that do not already exist and the selected schemas will be created. So obviously what it says is, if you don't have the table space already created, it will create the table space first, then it will create the schema. Okay, I'm fine with that. So it is creating table spaces required for the database for these users, two users. And as a create. So what it is doing, it is going to create the schemas that is required. So I install the sample app. Do I still need to do all this installation to be able to do the exercise? Or no, you don't need to. See, if your installation is done, if your OBIEE installation is already done, you don't need to install anything. So we use the same schemas, which is the standard schema. So you don't need to install it. If it is working, just leave it as it is. So your RCU is done. Simply say close. So your one part of the installation is done, which is the RCU installation, and your database is running, and you have the required schemas available in the database, and all you have to do now is you have to install your OBIEE. So you go to your OBIEE location. As I told you, like BI ship home is the location where you have your OBIEE available, and you go to the disk one. And it is easy to say double click on the setup, but we don't double click on the setup. We do it in a different way. So what I suggest is you go to the command prompt, open any command prompt. And I mean, here you simply open it, but again, in Windows 7, you right click and run as administrator. So that's the usual way, right? So you do a run as administrator, and you go to the location where your OBIEE is available. So this is your disk one location, and go to that location. So this is your disk one. So what is that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to execute the setup. As I say, setup.exe, fine. And why am I not giving just setup.exe? Because I would like to provide a Java location to this setup, so that my OBIEE setup will use that particular Java. So suppose sometimes what happens is, if you use a system for an year or two, more or less you'll have like 2-3 Java versions that is running or installed on your system without your knowledge also at times. So rather than the OBIEE getting confused which Java to use, or which software to use, so we are forcing the OBIEE to use a particular Java that you are providing. So for that, what I need to do, I need to provide my Java location, so which is my C Java JRocket JDK. So I take this location, I'll copy this one, not bin, up to the location where there is a bin folder available. Just imagine that way. Okay, I take this location, I go back to my command prompts. There is something called a JRE location. This is something that you provide to the setup. So for the setup, you are specifying the JRE location of your Java, and I paste it. This is the location. So I'm explicitly mentioning the JDK that my setup has to use throughout the installation. So that when even if you have like one or two different Java versions, it will stick to this particular Java for the entire installation as I enter. So it is doing a kind of a prerequisite checks, and then it will automatically open with the installation of the OBIEE. Don't worry, we'll finish it in another 5-10 minutes. So OBIEE installation is straightforward. Sometimes it will be slow. Yeah, it depends on your system speed. Since I'm running it on a virtual machine, it is comparatively slow. Right, so this is your OBIEE installation, and say next. That's it. Welcome page. You say next, and install software updates. And it's asking if you want to install the software updates automatically. No, skip for the software updates because I don't really want the updates to be installed automatically. It's not an. I mean, again, we don't need updates. Also, it's not a production environment or something. So it's practicing. We're just using it for a practicing environment. So simply says skip software update, so it doesn't bother you. Right. So there are three types of OBIEE installation that is available. One is a simple installation, other is an enterprise, other is a software only. So we go with the simple installation because simple installation is a straightforward installation. It will install the software, it will configure everything. It will give you the installed copy. That's it. We don't need to do anything. But again, in the enterprise and the software only installation, it is a little complex way of. It's not a complex way. It's a customized way of installing the OBIEE. But doesn't matter whether you install in a simple way or enterprise way or a software only mode way. The process may be here and there. It's different, but the software and its features will be the one and the same. So any of these features will have the same software or same OBIEE. There's no difference in that. The only difference is the procedure that you follow. So sometimes you install once, then you configure at later point of time. Sometimes you install with your own port numbers and with your own different settings. So there you go for the either enterprise or the software only. But for us, simple install is more than sufficient. We'll go with the simple installation. Select the simple install and say next. So it's doing a prerequisite, see your system is ready, or if it will do the memory, sufficient memory available or disk space available and all those basic things, and say next. So it is asking for the location where I would like to install my OBIEE. So I go to the C drive. I'm going to create a folder in C drive, say OBIEE 11G. Assuming you can give any name, doesn't matter. Okay, so I've created a folder OBIEE 11G. And I copy this location, I paste it here, or I can browse and navigate and select this folder, doesn't matter. So this is my OBIEE 11G, where I would like to install my OBIEE 11G in this location. Or you can give install, or you can give any name, but just make sure that you give a reasonable name. Or you can give something on Oracle BI, something. It's up to you. Say next. So when you install the OBIEE, right? So it will create an application server. Obviously, it will install an application server called WebLogic, and you log into the WebLogic, and you maintain the WebLogic and the deployments and the reports and everything. So for that, you need one user who's the super user, which is administrator. So it is asking you what is the user. Administrator by default it's a WebLogic user. If you want to change, you can change it, but I prefer you keep it same. Okay, but again, in productions and other different environments, we may have a different user, but otherwise, a standard user is what? WebLogic, and you're setting the password. You're creating a password for this user. So my password is welcome1, and my confirmation password is also welcome1, which is I am setting up a new password, which is welcome. So now after this, within the OBIEE installation, there is a user called WebLogic with a password welcome1 will get created. So that's what you're doing. So we are creating an administrator user with name WebLogic with a password. So remember, whatever the password that you give, make sure that you remember. If you lose that password and if you give wrong password, and sometimes uppercase, lowercase, Sometimes your caps lock is on and you give the password. So you have to be little conscious when you're doing the installations. That's what I said. Clicking next will get you into troubles. So make sure that every step that you're going through and you are aware of those things. And we make notes while installing. Sometimes we get carried away. So I prefer you keep a paper or notebook and you entering the details, like what details that you have given. So at some point of time, after 2 3 days, if you need something back, configuration what you have given, you can take a look at it. Okay, say next. So you have your the Oracle BI products available now. So within the Oracle BI, we are interested in Oracle Business Intelligence Enterprise Edition, and we are interested in Oracle Business Intelligence Publisher. So these two real-time decisions and S-base. At this point of time, I'm not going to select. I can select them, but again, it doesn't really help you much. And since it occupies additional disk space and the memory and the processes, everything, so let's not select these two and only select Business Intelligence Enterprise Edition as well as the publisher, BA publisher, and OBIEE, these two. And so next. It's taking time. Okay, so this is the place where I told you, right? So at some point of time within the OBA, it will come back to you and say that the schema details for the BI platform. Remember, where did we have these details? We have these details at the time of RCU installation, right? So if you remember, then we noted down what is the schemas. The schemas that we have is what dev underscore BA platform, dev underscore MDS. So that's what I said. You need to note down those schema names so that they are handy for you here. So you need to provide the database location where your database is running, and you have to provide the schema name and the password for what? For BA platform. So the first schema it is asking for is a BA platform. So if you look at the connection string, there is a syntax here: host colon port colon instance, which means I need to give my host name, which is my local host, colon what is my port my database is running on, 1521. What is my database service? ORCL. This is a standard parameter. Localhost colon 1521 colon ORCL, depending on your database configuration. If your database is running on localhost and with 1521 port and with a service name ORCL, you give this way. And my schema name, I copy this schema dev underscore BI platform, or you can type, it doesn't matter. And it's an uppercase, remember. Okay. The schema password I gave is what? Welcome one. So that is what I said, if you have to remember these passwords, because we did gave it at the time of, we'll give it the time of installation. So probably we might forget like what I've given there. So that's the reason making notes is very important. It will help you. So if I have made notes for the password that I've given for dev underscore BA platform, it is easy for me here. Okay, so the schema is dev underscore BA platform and the password for this is a welcome one, and I say next. So if the username, password, everything is right and it is able to connect to the database, it will automatically take you to the next schema, which is a MDS. So if the password is the same, if the connection string is the same, which means if it is also on the same database, it will automatically give you the details pre-populated, including the user and connection string and the password. Say next. So if they are same, say next. So now your details are provided. So now my OBIEE knows where is my schema available, where is my tables available, so that it can use these tables if required or whenever it is required. So I don't want to receive any security updates and select this option. Say next. So you have not provided an email address. Do you wish to remain uninformed for critical security configuration? No problem. Yes. So this is your OBIEE installation configurations. If you would like to save, you can save it. But these are all the different. So it's a middleware home is OBIEE 11G, where we are installing OBIEE 11G, and there's an Oracle home inside it, and there is a WebLogic home, domain, instance. We'll discuss all these things. But again, this is the basic configuration which it is using, and this is the locations that it is installing. So say install. Okay, now it's automatic now. It's untouched. You don't need to touch it again. So it will start the installation. It will take around 2 hours. I mean, 1 hour to 2 hours, depending on your system speed and all. Make sure that you connect power to the system in case if you're not in front of your system, and make sure that it doesn't go to sleep or it doesn't. Sometimes if you don't use it for system for 30 minutes or 1 hour and you are away, then the system get based on the power settings. Sometimes it will get shut down, or it will go to hibernate. So don't let it go to the hibernate. So change your power settings time being in a way that it won't go to hibernate, or you stay in front of the system and take a look at it. Okay, so it will start copying the files. It will take 2 hours and 1 hour to 2 hour, and you don't need to do anything in between. So all you have to do is at the end, once everything is done, it will enable the finish option, where simply say finish and your OBIEE installation is done. Right? Okay, so that's the OBIEE installation in Crisp, and in a way where it is the simplest installation. You don't really need to worry about the installation of the OBIEE, but the reason I have shown you and explained you is I see it's very very important to know the installation, because unless we know the installation, we are not confident of using the product. It's like little things about the car, then you're confident, right? You can go anywhere, you can go on a long trip, because if it is a flat tire, you know how to use a step in. Right? Then you're confident you can go on any road, because there is a step in and you know how to fix it. The same way here, if you know the OBI installation, and you're confident if something goes wrong, you think like, okay, let it. I want to explore it, and even if something goes wrong, I can reinstall it. That's not a big thing. So that kind of comfort and confidence that you require when you're working with a tool. So that's what we are trying to actually achieve. Okay. So anybody has any questions in this installation, or anything that you don't understand, or anything that you want me to explain, any specific thing here?
Because
Hey Dinesh,
Mhm.
actually, can you when you showed the way to find out the local host or something, that time the system got freezed up. Can you please show me where to find out the local host
Okay,
name?
so TNS names usually, if I go here, um, so it depends on your database installation. It doesn't require to be the same for every system or every installation, depending on where you install your database. Usually this is the location where see app and the username. So for this I'm using administrator, so it is administrator. If your user is Dinesh, see app Dinesh, so like that, and inside it, and you have your database install. So inside the database installation you have the product. Inside the product you have the version of the tool, and it is a DB instance, DB1, the first instance of the DB. And inside this there is something called a network, and within the network there is an admin, and you have the TNS names file. If I double click on this TNS names file, this is your details of the this is your instance of the Oracle. So the host is the user PC or local host, port is 1521, your service name is ORCL. See, I can give the user -PC, that's perfectly fine, or I can give localhost.
Okay. So anything it will
Yeah,
accept, even if you specify a local host also it
will
will accept.
accept. Yeah, localhost is kind of the local system name. It will accept that one. So anybody else? Any questions? Are we good? Okay, so it doesn't matter. Even if you find it little complex to understand, or if you think there's too much to know, it's just for what do you call it as uh, education purpose. We don't need to really go through all this process and install it on our own. You can go for the VM. Yeah, but again, we can give it a try, and there's nothing wrong. So I'll share you all these softwares and all these details, and I'll also share you this video, right? So when you start installing, just keep everything together and make sure that you have some time. Don't rush yourself and install it on a busy day. So make sure that you have some sufficient time, like an hour or two, and you can comfortably go through the video and download and leisurely work on it. So that way, you don't do mistakes. But preferably you go through the installation video at least once before you actually do it. Though you know some parts of it already, uh, but again, it's a good to go once, because sometimes you may miss 1 or 2 points and you get carried away. So we don't want to do that. Okay. Right then. So if there is